News Talk 1150. Good morning. It is Friday. Oh, yeah, it's Friday. This is Newsmakers. Time is 8:37, and you heard that whoop whoop. Yeah, that's Kriquette Davis. She's in the house. Good morning, Kriquette.
Good morning.
So everybody knows Kriquette from the Family Y, and always fun stuff, especially right now with all the Majesty Mania going on, and you guys had the big fun reveal party last night for the votes.
Yep, that was awesome. We didn't have quite as many people as we had last week, but we had around 100, which I thought was great. Of course, to me, 10 people were great.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was great. It was festive, and, you know, it's so amazing 'cause when you get in that situation, like when they called her up, what they're going to do is like every hair on my body just stood up, you know, because you just want so much for her to go on. Like you and I were talking a little bit ago, she's just such a dynamic person.
She is that.
And it's really been cool to kind of see how multifaceted she is through the different people that come to the viewing parties and different people that we've talked to. So we're real proud.
Well, you should be. It has to be a little surreal to be watching a national television show that we've all been hooked on for the past 13 years. And suddenly there's Majesty, who's worked for you at the Y as a preschool teacher for a year, and she's on the big screen.
And our kids are just beside themselves.
I can only imagine.
I mean, that's what's been great, too, is that they've highlighted, because she said, I think night before last, she was saying, you know, I just love my kids. And so that's great, because the kids are way about Majesty, too. So you can tell there's a connection with them. And when you look at the pictures of the kids, they're just ecstatic. I wish they could stay up late enough to come to the party, but I don't want to encourage late night.
Let's not do that. We'll let the parents handle that one. So this morning, we're going to delve into a little darker side of things, Darkness to Light. And it's a project that you and I talked about. You allowed me to be a part of this journey with you. This started, about 2 years ago now. And what it's all about, because the terms Darkness to Light don't necessarily tell you anything till you know what it is.
Right. A program called Darkness to Light Stewards of Children, and it's been in existence, I think, for a little over 8 years. Pretty much it was a group of survivors down around the Charleston area that got together and they started working on this program. It's a really good program because it talks about something that people don't want to talk about, which is child sexual abuse. You know, that's where, when you say darkness to light, we have kept our folks in the dark for so long because child sexual abuse is not something that people want to talk about. And unfortunately, our children suffer because of that. I understand how difficult it is to talk about it. But my goal through this whole thing and being allowed to be a part of the Darkness Light program is to shed some light on what's going on so that children don't have to go through what I went through. To me, if I can save one child by making the journey, then that's what I want to do. The statistics are horrifying.
Really?
It's 1 in every 4 girls and 1 in every 4 boys will be sexually abused by the time they're 18 years old. And that's reported cases only.
Exactly. And as you said, so many people keep it a hidden secret.
It's
Your own personal case.
Yeah, that's what you're taught. And unfortunately, there's so many side effects to it. And I think the abusers and the perpetrators don't even really understand what they're doing as far as that sort of stuff. I think it's short term for them, whatever it is to them. But you're talking about a lifelong effect it has on these children. Fortunately, we're in an era now where people will talk about it and they'll get help and things like that. But if you think back decades ago, I mean, this is not a new problem. That's one of the things that people go, God, you know, there's just so much childhood sexual abuse going on now that there wasn't. And I'm like, no, not really. I mean, you know, because if you think about, in my case, I'm soon to be 48 years old, and for 8 years, I didn't tell a soul. I mean, it's not something that in conversation, oh, by the way, guess what happened to me?
And for those 37 years, was it something you lived with daily? Or had you suppressed all of that and then suddenly, or not necessarily suddenly, but things began emerging that made you say, I've got to deal with this?
Yeah, I think, and one of the biggest questions I had when all this started with my journey was, is it possible for a 5-year-old to take something that horrific and push it back in your mind? Because I would have glimpses, I think, about it, but not like every day, like, oh, it's happened or whatever. I think the path that I took was, okay, I'm going to put this somewhere, and I'm going to go on as best I know how.
Right.
And everybody, fortunately for me, and I've hurt some people along the way, but fortunately for me, I didn't take the path of drugs or different things, because there's so much we talk about teenage pregnancy.
Yes.
And we talk about how bad it is. And people are like, you know, I just don't understand why those girls get pregnant. Well, a lot of the teenage pregnancy comes from being abused, from being sexually abused. And who's going to tell I'm pregnant because a family member or a close friend or somebody I trusted raped me? So they live with that secret, they don't tell it. And then we kind of have the stigmatism about teenage moms. It's not fair to do that. I'm very fortunate because I have seen, based on the survivors that I've met and based on people that come to me, that's the best feeling in the world to me, is if somebody trusts me enough to say, this happened to me and I just want to talk with you. Because I know I'm one of the lucky ones. There's a girl in the survivor video who said her first thought, her first day of school at kindergarten, was she wanted to kill herself.
At 5 years old.
At 5 years old. And it breaks my heart. I think about what a great childhood I had and what a great family I had and how many great opportunities I had, and that I was able, that my mind was able to push me up a little bit enough to have some coping mechanisms and have such a strong family. One of the things I beat myself up about sometimes is that I didn't talk to anybody, because I think I could have been in a much better place than I am in now. And I'm in a great place now, but it's like, I feel, it's like a guilty feeling because I wouldn't let anybody in.
And that's got to be a hard hurdle to jump over, is getting rid of that guilt. And that's the biggest thing that, besides the just horrific memory that some can suppress and others don't necessarily have that coping mechanism. But getting over that hurdle of, it wasn't my fault, it's got to be huge.
Well, because you can't fathom it. Even though in your mind you know that you were only 5 years old, or or ever how old you were, it doesn't matter if you were 5, 15, it doesn't matter. You still go, I must have done something, because that's the way we're conditioned to think.
Right.
And perpetrators are so good about that. It's like, well, this is going to be our secret, because if you tell someone, A, they're not going to believe you, or this is going to happen to your family, or and I've heard so many different versions of that, but they put you in such great fear. That's all you have to cling on to, is that, so I did something. I made this happen. And, and it's a struggle. I still struggle with it sometimes, because it's like, maybe if I wouldn't have been XYZ, or maybe if I hadn't have been, whatever. And that's one of the things I talk to people the most about, is that it's the adult's job to protect our children. However, we've got to make sure that they know who they can trust and who they can talk to, because we've never, my parents raised me to always be polite and listen to my elders.
Sure.
What child is going to say, no, you can't do that to me? So we've got to empower our kids so that they can do that, but we need to remember that it's not their responsibility. They are our responsibility. And, we need to empower them, but we need to protect them. We need to make sure we don't put them in one-on-one situations, whether they're in daycare, summer camp, or even with babysitters and stuff. If you do that, you need to make sure you're checking up. Make sure you know all the facts about sexual abuse. Because there's a lot of people that don't even realize that cyberbullying and, all those things play into, sexual abuse.
So there's a lot of education that needs to happen, not only educating the children of what's acceptable, what's not, who to trust, who not to trust,
right,
but also the parents to make certain that they don't put their kids in those situations.
That's right.
And it's never done with malice. Most parents just aren't thinking that this is a suspect.
Well, because they know, they know exactly how to work the families. And that's, again, the survivor video is so strong about that. There was a boy named Wesley Bogue who, his dad was either a preacher or a pastor at church, and one of the other pastors had been sexually abusing him, and he was afraid to say anything. The dad was just horrified. He was like, if I would have known, but, Wesley's like, well, I didn't think, I was afraid nobody would believe me, and all this stuff. And now his parents stepped up to the plate. They called the law enforcement. They filed charges. They made sure that until everything was rectified, that the man was not around children anymore. So they stepped up, and it was a hard thing for them, because this is their church you're talking about.
It's all about darkness to light, and a very unpopular subject, but one that needs to be brought into the forefront. You and I have done that for years together now with domestic violence and sexual abuse, but leaning more heavily into the domestic violence, and it's another subject people want to put into a closet, but we're making headway now, and people are okay to talk about it. Well, it's time to do the same with child sexual abuse, because you are a survivor. You began your journey about 2 years ago of dealing with this, and I want to kind of delve into that a little bit more, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Because if you can help, like you said, one person, it's all worthwhile. And so maybe there's someone out there listening right now that says, how did you do it, Kriquette? Where did you start 2 years ago to get where you are today?
Well, it's like I said before, I think there were some glimpses and some things, and you just like any other bad thing that happens to you, you learn how to quickly put it away.
Right.
And so I think anytime things would kind of creep up, I would go, you're not coming in. And so one of my favorite things to do to relax is to go out sometimes and run. We have a pretty big piece of property behind the house and go run. I was out running one day, and I caught a building kind of out of the corner of my eye, that was way off in the distance. And I told somebody, I said it was like all of a sudden a video clip started reeling in my head. It just stunned me. And I sat down you know, in the middle of the field with my dogs, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, what is going on? And so I tried to collect myself a little bit, and you know, and all these things are coming back that had been suppressed for such a long time. And your first thought is that there is no way this happened, and I have been able to put those kind of things so far behind me that nobody knows, you know. And then you start thinking, too, it's like, I don't think anybody's going to believe me, number one.
Right.
And then secondly, you know, especially kind of with what I do, dealing with families and different things, is that what kind of person are they going to think I am? You know, what is my husband going to think? I was afraid to go home. I mean, and not because anything had ever been said, but it was like, I'm damaged. I'm not worth any value. So I got the dogs, we went home, and I talked to my husband for a minute, and I told him, I said, we need to go talk to somebody. I said, I don't want to talk to you about this because I need some help. So he was great. I mean, he went with me, and we talked to somebody and kind of started going down the path of trying to get some help to, you know, be able to deal with this stuff and get rid of it, because it's all this poison inside your body.
Right.
And when you don't feel like you have any value, which is the way I felt my whole life, and unfortunately, for me to feel that way, because my whole life I've had cheerleaders along the way. You know, and you think about, I mean, weird stuff. When we'd go do stuff at school, and for some reason I'd be, you know, the last one to get picked up, I would be like, well, they don't want me to go. And I never understood, you know, and they would come pick me up, and it was fine, but it would be like those minutes before. You know, anytime
you had no idea what those feelings were really based on.
It was awful. I mean, I remember sometimes at home, and my mom was like, what are you doing standing by the door? I'm like, I don't want them to forget me, you know, and it's like all that kind of feeling. And so, you know, and the bad thing is it's not allowed me to, I've got a lot of really good friends, but I let people get to a certain point, and then it's like,
that's
I'm
far
good.
enough.
I'm good. You know, now I'll do anything in the world for you, and you can do anything for me, but I got to keep these four walls around me.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things I just wrote for you guys was talking about walls, and I thought, because somebody was talking about building walls, and I thought, you know, the bad thing about building walls is you're protecting yourself, but you're also not allowing other people to get through.
Exactly. Let me stop real quick and tell everyone, Kriquette is a guest writer for us on Goldsboro Daily News and has been for some time. And the beautiful part is that she is taking you along on this journey and sharing with you each milestone and each success. And, you know, I've known you for a number of years, but I know a different Kriquette now. I really do. And I'm very proud of you, because this has not been easy. And to be so public about it, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You're a beautiful person, and even more so now that you're taking this and teaching and reaching out to other people that may be going through the same thing, or may, you know, there could be a young child out there right now that a parent suddenly goes, wow, what you just said kind of relates to what I'm going through dealing with my own child. Perhaps I haven't looked in the right place.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this, again, we talk about the education piece, and I don't think for 1 minute that parents subject their children to things, but we've got to do a better job, you know, because, again, fortunately, I'm in a situation where there have been constant love and support for me even before anybody knew about it. Just because I deal with it this way doesn't mean that's the right way for everybody to deal with it, because I've had several people go, I just can't do that. Well,
there's no playbook.
That's right. You have to deal with it in your way. And, you know, Dale and I had been doing things at church and stuff, and then we have started doing more things. We started going to the bridge back in September, and doing more things with the like the family things, and Family Life has some like Weekend to Remember things that are going on that have helped us as a couple, because I can't imagine his frustration at being, he could get to a point and that was it. I mean, like, different things would trigger me, and I wouldn't run and take off and go anywhere, but now I can shut you down in a minute and not listen. And that's not fair to him. It's not fair to my family. It's not fair to my friends. And, you know, it's just being able to allow somebody in a little bit, and to be able to feel like it's okay. And, you know, that's kind of why I brought up, you know, us starting to go to church at the bridge, is there's so many different things there that I kind of sit there and Pastor Farrell or some of the other ones will say something, and it's like an aha moment to me. A couple weeks ago, Pastor Farrell said something that I heard another survivor say, and I thought, okay, this is one of the things I got to get off my list. And he was talking about forgiveness, and it was talking about how if you don't forgive somebody else and you keep carrying that around, that's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Right. And you did one of your articles on that.
I got a lot of flack sometimes about that because people are like, how can you tell somebody to forgive their sexual perpetrator? Well, again, that's a decision that's up to you. But I'm here to tell you, for your own self-worth and to make things better for you, you've got to do that because they don't care.
No.
They really don't.
They've moved on. And
yeah, I mean, and all you're doing is creating, I'm not saying that you should forget what happened. And that's, I think, a lot of times where people get confused. Now, but it's not that. I mean, it's about you've got to make yourself whole again.
Let me ask you this before we go, because I know that you're continuing on with this program, and you said you've got something at University of Mount Olive coming up. So let's tell people about that, because, we've educated them a little bit this morning, and we've told them there is hope. Mm-hmm. Now let's tell them how to get it.
There's going to be a community meeting, and this will be the second one. We had one in the fall at the Southern Bank Auditorium in Mount Olive, and it's on March 31st at 6:30, and it'll be open to the public, and it's only an hour-long meeting. We show a survivor's video, and then we talk about the classes that we do. The classes are called Darkness to Light, Stewards of Children. It's a 2-hour training, and I've been, probably in the last year, I think I've taught maybe 900 people total, because we've been working with the school systems. They have been fabulous about letting us come in and talk to the teachers, the social workers, and everybody else, because it's everybody. The school bus, the school bus drivers and stuff. But more importantly, I want to get to everybody in the community.
And she's doing a good job. I took the class, and it's awesome.
It's really good. You can go online, and it's www.d2l.org, which D2L stands for darknesslight.org, and they have so many educational things and different things on there and ways to get help. So, those resources are free. You can use them. You can call me. You can email me at the Y. Anything that I can do to get the word out. I told somebody the other day, I said, anytime, any day, I'll be there.
All right. Kriquette Davis, as always, thank you. You'll come back and talk to us about this?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.